Hey, Bridget here. Before we get into today's episode, I want to remind you to come to our live taping and anniversary party at Sunny's Pizza in Parkview on August 28th. Wine tasting starts at 5, and live taping starts at 6:30. Okay, now... Today on CityCast DC. Mount Zion is one of the oldest Black cemeteries in DC, and a lot of formerly enslaved people are buried there. Plus, it was a stop on the Underground Railroad. Lisa Fager from the Black Georgetown Foundation is here to tell us about the site's unexpected and rich history, efforts to restore Mount Zion and its sister cemetery, and how Washingtonians can find their locally buried ancestors. Today is August 8th. I'm Bridget Todd, and here's what DC is talking about. Lisa, let's talk about the oldest Black cemeteries in DC. What can you tell me?
Yes. Of the 4 historic Black cemeteries left in DC that look like cemeteries, I oversee 2 of them, and they are the 2 oldest. I mean, these are the only 2 cemeteries left in Washington, D.C. that we know people died, that were born and died into slavery.
Wow.
You know, we're only 2 miles from the White House. We have connections to every institution in Washington, D.C. and more. Many of these people were brought here by founding fathers and lived in Georgetown. We had Martha Washington's grandson/nephew, Black man, buried in the cemetery in 1842. You can look him up. William Custis Costin, Black man. And so, you know, it really does require you to get to know your history once you step into a historic place. And the cemetery, a lot of times, is the only thing that connects us to the rest of Georgetown, knowing that Herring Hill and that area near the cemetery, which really is like 27th and Q Street, right beside the Dumbarton House Museum. You can get there, 3 or 4 blocks from DuPont Circle Metro Station. So it's a nice walk. And if you're on the multi-use trail at Rock Creek, you probably pass it all the time and you don't even know because a lot of the markers have sunk under the ground, particularly the ones that were on the side of the slope. So you don't really see that, but you'll see Oak Hill. So just know when you look to your left, that's us.
Okay, Lisa, who created these cemeteries and when?
The first one was established in 1808 when the Methodist Church was integrated here in Georgetown. And so it interred both Black and white parishioners. And at that time, the church was 50% African-American, 50% white. However, it was also half enslaved and free people that attended the church, and they were segregated, of course, to the balcony, pretty common history. However, these Methodists, Black Methodists, decided they couldn't take it anymore by 1814, and they were like, we got to get up out of here. So they, by 1816, had established the first Black congregation here in Washington, D.C. And they were located very closely to the actual cemetery. And history has it that they were among the few churches, Black churches, that were part of the Underground Railroad. And we know for a fact the cemetery, the Mount Zion Cemetery, has a vault, a holding vault on site this very day that you can actually see. Everything is original. And this is where people would hide on the Underground Railroad, freedom seekers. And we have documentation from both churches. And so the Georgetown Cemetery is part of that narrative. And then in 1842, the other half of the cemetery was established by free Black women in 1842, okay? They were a mutual aid society. And basically that was a group of women who took care of each other. You paid in money every week. And then if something happened to you where you lost your job, you were unemployed, couldn't make rent, these women were there for you with the money. And here they had purchased a place where free Black people could be buried in honor and dignity. And so these women, when no women, not just Black women, white women could not purchase property in 1842. So, they had a strategy as we, always got
right.
We don't hear no. We hear, oh, another way has to be had. they basically got a man to do it, and then they made him a trustee, and he signed it over to them, and we made it happen. And so these two cemeteries make up about 3 acres, and they border Oak Hill Cemetery, which was a white-only cemetery that was established in 1849 after both of these cemeteries. And there's a drastic difference there. That cemetery was white-only then, and it was given government appropriations and, protected. And so we suffer from erosion. Meanwhile, they have no sites of erosion in their path. And so right now we're trying to fix that.
Mike, a little birdie told me that somebody recently had a birthday.
It is true. Although I thought you were going to say John Riggins and Barack Obama, both of whom share my birthday.
That's a good list of people to share birthdays with. So you, Barack Obama, and CityCast DC all have similar, if not the same, birthdays.
Right. So, and we are celebrating the CityCast anniversary, doing something live. On August 28th, we are both going to be there for a live anniversary taping and party.
I can't wait. It's all happening at Sunny's Pizza in Parkview. It's going to be an anniversary party and live taping. It starts at 5 p.m. and there's going to be a natural wine tasting by Plant Wines. Monday night, taping starts at 6:30, and it'll kind of be a nice fall foliage looking event. We're going to be talking about DC's fall fairs, so getting us ready for the cooler fall weather, which y'all know is my favorite season.
And we will be joined by Chelsea Ceruzzo, formerly of Axios, now my Politico colleague.
I can't wait. I'm excited to get to hang with you and celebrate both your birthday, CityCast DC's birthday, Barack Obama's birthday, all in one spot. When you started this work in 2019, you couldn't even see many of the stones, and I understand that you've uncovered a ton of them, like 100 gravestones were unearthed in 2020 alone. How have you been doing that work?
So that was really exciting because that was around COVID, and we had a man come in and do a workshop to show us how to restore the markers. And so we were putting them together, cleaning them, all of those things, learning that. He also told us or advised us, because we have a lot of weeds and all kinds of stuff that grow in the cemetery. So he was like, when you see the daffodils come up in the spring, I need you to it's like one of those utility poles. Take one of those and tap them beside the daffodils, see if you hit anything. And here we found 100 markers and artifacts, people who had not even been documented. And, that's the other thing. We predate death records by 70 years. So it's like this constant, MacGyver kind of thing. We're finding casket makers and furniture makers, and people would put together coffins who would say where they died. And, and most people died in their homes. So then you knew where he lived. It's all these little things that you would find to help build the story of those who are here.
So the archival and sort of mystery solving work of that is really something to think about what it really means to predate death records. So I know that, the physical restoration of the stones is only one part of that. You're really trying to rebuild and tell the stories and the lost records of folks' lives. And I understand that in some places in the United States, you would not be able to resurrect those files. But in DC, you actually kind of can. Why is that?
So there are some things that are unique only to Washington, D.C., and that would be the D.C. Emancipation Compensation Records. And so slavery was abolished, pre-Juneteenth, April 16th, 1862, was the abolition of slavery in Washington, D.C., that also went with the British model where they paid slave owners. So slave owners, in order to get compensated for their freeing of their free labor, they had to fill out an application, a petition. And in the petition, they had to note who the people were, how old they were, how tall they were, all these descriptions, and basically make their case about how much they should be paid for each person that they enslaved. And so we have these records, although painful sometimes to read, when you read about Lucy Bowles and the side marks she had on each side of her mouth, understanding that probably at some point in her life she had a ball and chain in her mouth. They'll say mulatto, copper-toned, light, bright, whatever, dark, African. You can start putting together the picture of these folks. And so with that information, you can start connecting people. Even understanding, like one of these slave owners talked about this one family whose last name was King, say. But at the end, when they were freed, changed their last name to Rhodes. And he noted that. I mean, what great information to know if you're the one doing this research around your family. It's pretty incredible to find these linkages just because white folks had to write about it in order to get paid, and they wanted to get paid.
Where can folks see some of the fruits of this effort, or maybe even see if they've got family who are interred at Mount Zion Cemetery?
So we just launched our first phase of our, what we're, lack of a better name, we're still thinking of a good name, but Cemetery Information System, where we put together, and behind the scenes, there's so many fields that we're filling out. But the front facing just has a couple right now, and you can search by name. You can search by enslaved. Right now, we're still have volunteers helping us put up all the information that we have. But we have quite a bit, about 4,000 people in the database. And so you can check for these names and start trying to, connect the dots, particularly if you've had any relatives. It's amazing. I mean, just the other day, I found out one of the folks was from Havana, Cuba.
Wow.
Had been enslaved and brought over here from Cuba in 1820. Even some people that on their records, they were straight from Africa, from Senegal. These are some of the first folks who, have these connections to their homelands, So it's just amazing how we have an opportunity to really dig deep. And I'm really glad that people want to know more, particularly, DC is in Florida. And so, I have a lot of college students and high school students that are coming to us, and really, I'm really excited about growing this database. And so you can find it at blackgeorgetown.info, or you can just go to our regular website, blackgeorgetown.com. It'll get you there as well. If you would like to volunteer, please go to the website, and there's a volunteer form, and we put, coming up, we like to do restoration, demos, and we also like to do events that honor the ancestors.
That's beautiful. Lisa, thank you so much for the work, and thank you for being here and telling us about it.
All right. Thank you, Bridget.
Before you go, here's some quick news. 13 people in D.C. were killed in shootings in just the first 5 days of August. This includes 6 people killed on Saturday alone. D.C. has had at least 158 homicides this year, putting the city on track for its deadliest year in 2 decades. Also, President Joe Biden doesn't want federal employees to work from home anymore. He's calling for his cabinet to aggressively execute plans for federal employees to work more in their offices because they say it will allow them to deliver better results for the American people. And finally, House Republicans are trying to cut the federal funding for D.C.'s public school system and put more money into the city's private school voucher program. Instead of evenly splitting the funds between the public school system, charter campuses, and the private school voucher program, Republicans want to cut public schools' piece to 1/6 of the funding. That's all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe to our morning newsletter, Hey DC. I'll be back tomorrow morning with even more news from around the city. Talk to you then.